Alrighty, welcome to the 25th episode of Magus Talk. Today we have another edition with Jay's attempt at summoning. This is the next jig called the Garrett's. Now we're not going to get into the summoning process, we're going to get into Jay's results. And Jay's results are, to him at least, not satisfactory, and he will explain why. My point is here, there is no such thing as failure, not in any finalized way. This system in particular is a system of developmental occultism or evolutionary esotericism. It's cultivational. That means that there's a feedback process, even if you're not aware of it, where your issues, your blockages, your conditionings, anything that inhibits you from an open connection to the so called unseen, where these influences lie and express themselves, so to speak, between that and your own nervous system, your own spirit, your own mind, your own energy system, if the connection is faulty for some reason, or if there is an issue, a psychological issue that's creating an inhibitory response, this practice will bring it to the surface. All you need to do is observe what's going on in your life in order to kind of get it, because these things are repetitive. The patterns that inhibit us, as well as the patterns that encourage us, are usually repetitive because they're important. And what they would like to do, if you can ascribe intelligence to them, even, is for us to pay attention. So this is all a learning experience. And Jay's presentation is going to be split up into three parts. In the first part, he's going to tell you why he thinks he dropped the ball or that he dropped the ball, and I'll comment on that. We're not going to do any extensive long commentary because I want to save something for the end. You see, Jay sent me an extra bite because he thought he was venting, and okay, well, I polished his presentation a little bit because there was a lot of emotional expressions in it that the audience doesn't really need to hear. But there is, and I communicated with him again and provided some advice, some recommendations, and they kind of had a positive effect. But we'll get into that because I'm not going to present that other lengthy, piece of feedback that he gave me. I will present a response to it, and there's no need. It's not going to be off topic or anything because it's kind of a continuity with all the rest. It's all lumped in. So, without any further ado, let me just hand the baton over to Jay. Jay, thanks for being here, and let's see what you got to tell us.
Hello, Ari. Hello, Tara. And hello, everyone else that is listening. Let me just give you a rundown of what has been happening with Ball and Agaraz. Nothing. I dropped the ball somewhere. I dropped the ball and Agaraz somewhere. Well, I got some guesses, but it was going. Last recording I sent, Ball he was on his game, he was in human form, and I was ready. And then I think I summoned Agaraz twice. I was also doing a lot of work, a lot of exhausting work. Anyway, I was tired, exhausted. Then, all right, maybe that had a little something to do with Agaraz not getting the attention he needed. But I did see him in his demon form where, I saw, or maybe it wasn't him, but I saw one of my familiars, so it could have been him. Definitely riding like a plesiosaurus or something like that. But, just something aquatic with fin-type legs kind of moving around. So, all right, it was a Garaz. I made contact, but it was... I'm not going to go so far as to say weak. Well, okay, it was about the same kind of vibe that I got from Ball in the beginning. But there was no human form contact at all, and I keep trying. And my familiars are saying, yeah, keep trying. So I'm doing something wrong.
Okay, now Jay, I know you're listening here, and even though I sent you some stuff, there's always more processing of the information to be done. So let me put it this way. You did summon them, you got the general chimeric form, the form that's animalistic, that is symbolic, that you observe within your inner eye what comes out through the triangle. And that is the point of interface because when it comes into human form or refined form, as the Latin part of the text expresses, it means that you've actually connected. So when you're focusing in this alien form, in this monstrous form, the therionic form, this monstrous form that people kind of feel intimidated by, you're not really connecting to it. You are reaching out. And so these symbols come and they're all charged and they're all separated. And as soon as they blend into your consciousness in a way that's relatable, then it turns into human form. And then your energy body and your awareness experience the texture of the jinn, at least in this system. This isn't the same as traditional summoning, where the ritual favors unconscious processes. And then you have an impacting experience, but it's brief and it has to be specific, and you only have one chance to make your request. And even then, it probably won't be. You won't be given the benefit of the doubt, hostile responses, and all of that, depending. Many people find that they have affinity to some of these spirits, but not to others. But over here in this system, that kind of affinity doesn't matter because you're doing a specific approach where you are integrating with the essence of the spirit, with the essence, let's call it a presence or the jinn presence. Now, jinn basically means mystery or something that's hidden. So this is a presence that is also a mystery. We don't know what it is. It doesn't come out and say this is it. But the analogy of the lamp that I've expressed in other presentations, video and podcast, where the jinn is basically smokeless fire. So it's the heat of a lamp, the fire of the lamp. The angel is the light of the lamp, and the lamp itself is the human vessel. So the brass vessel essentially is the energy body of the human being. So it wasn't a failure in that sense. Nobody dropped any balls, unless, your own. But what's important is that the stress could have inhibited, absorption, so to speak, or interface, or accommodation, or familiarization, as I'd like to call it, where you experience a familiar is an is when the refined form resonates with your own psyche to the point that your identity can link with it. So it's not a part of you per se, but it's very friendly and familiar to you. It's not quite an extension of yourself, but there's no gap between you. And people are mis mis um, misinformed in saying that this automatically leads to some kind of possession. Possession is a violation that occurs by a malevolent presence. And these things are more like you might treat them like animals. They're not wild animals, however, completely because they have affinity with humanity. They have a history. There's mythology here. The mythology means that there is experience, but they're, you might call animals that have become feral to a certain extent. So there may be a certain process of taming them. Now, the taming in this system becomes far easier because you don't sign specific contracts for selfish ends. The contract here is the willingness to work with them in order to resolve your own karma. So you become an example to reflect that spirit. So its corrupt aspects, is the toxicity and all of that can easily be filtered out through your psyche without you becoming overwhelmed. Remember, there's an angelic element. We're proving here that the angelic and the jinn element are not incompatible. They can work together, there can be symbiosis, and this whole thing is supposed to be a matrix of symbiosis, including the human being. So the point is that the so called failure occurred at the point where the jinn becomes human. And that is usually a karmic issue involved. Something is going on here that is blocking the absorption of the jinn. And this is revealed afterwards. So the stress, yes, that's a factor. All you do is just relax, meditate, get into a state. That's why we have the preliminaries, the energy work, the fusion alchemy. All of that is supposed to um, balance things out, so to speak. You balance the emotions, you cultivate certain virtues of the organ energies, and especially you create a kind of protective envelope through the archangelic ruler interface that we create with the cardinal quarters. And we'll get more into that further down. So let's just see what else Jay has to tell us here.
Now, let's go on to today's events. I had a show today at a private party, and I have felt like this at shows before. Uh, I feel like an idiot for not seeing this. But so anyway, Danielle was at the show. She saw it. She was having a good time. Yay. Okay. We all know that that's the main vampire in my life. But I was exhausted at the show to the point of where my hands were shaking, my knees were shaking. And this is not a show. This is a private party. These are people I know. I shouldn't be nervous. And there is no nervousness with me. I've been on stage before. It's not that big of a deal. But when Danielle's around, it is, man. To the point of where, I should have seen this before. I blamed it on when she's around during other shows. I blamed it on. Okay, maybe I'll not drink the night before, which probably does help. Which I did not the night before this little private party show. I went ahead and drank because it's not all that important. But I felt truly exhausted. I blamed it on, it is East Texas. It is really hot. I have felt that exhausted before during shows, and I always came up with an excuse from it. This vampirism just has to stop. Maybe the vampirism is screwing up the summoning, but it has to stop. There's just no way it can continue. There's just no way. And I think I was pointed this out before. This person is out of control. It's like, really? Do you want me in traction? Do you want me dead? So, anyway, this is almost a soundbite to myself. But I know, Ari, you're going to have some cool things to say. But I'm going to continue. I'm not really sure what I want to do with the summoning, because I've tried. Maybe I need to try again. That's what the familiars keep telling me, but they're part of me. They could be making my own mistakes. I know there's genie influence and there's genie advice, but it's always good to hear it from a different genie angle. So if you got advice, say it. I don't know what I'm going to do. Probably I'll summon a Garaz again and Ball at the same time. I think what I'm doing is working because it worked with Ball. Why didn't it work with the Garaz? What happened? So yeah, or if I don't summon them, maybe I'll go back and read what you wrote about summoning. But it's like I read it, I understand it. Yeah, sure, maybe I've forgotten it, but it got in subconsciously, so I don't think I need to go so mental into it. I went in that direction enough, I think. Maybe I just need to cast a side spell or something. It's just like no more vampirism, and if I do that, maybe that'll work. Maybe that's what I'll do. Not really sure. But Ari, if I get a soundbite, giving me any info, or if this soundbite helps you, or and I know you're going to put it up on the podcast, so great. Um, I've, I've, I've never. Now I could blame it on 3 days of 3 really hot days and having to break camp and then reset it when I got back. But here's the thing, and I should have said this in the sound bite, but I'm just it's I'm also tired of fucking dancing around the names. I might as well just fucking tell it like it is. I don't know, maybe it's a better idea to do that. I don't really fucking care. But my God, Ari, it was like it was crazy. I because I'm back here and I've got the energy. I'm good to go. I'm like, you can listen to me, you can tell. But when I was there, I felt like I was at the show. I felt like I was going to pass out. Really? That's just like, oh my God.
So the advice I give Jay in this instance is that look, what have you done up to this point in this system? What have you learned in your practice that's working for you? And anybody who's been listening to the previous stuff will know that, well, there's a point where you summon the archangels. There's a point where you summon the four rulers. And essentially, since the rulers are visualized like pillars, you combine the archangel with the ruler. And you do this through the aces. I use the tarot a lot in this system. So the aces are the ace of swords, wands, cups, and pentacles. Each one is visualized after they're generated in a certain way using our senses, the sensory openings of the head, the nose, olfactory, the ears, the eyes, the sense of taste in the mouth. These correspond to four elements, except for fire, which is in the center in this system, the heart. And they also correspond to the four organs. Each sense corresponds to an organ. So at first you tune into the mental vitality, the mental energy called Shen in Taoism, through the sense organs and the sensations they generate. And then you go into the prana or chi or life force aspect for later on. But when you generate these, you can do this off the bat. I mean, in the practice that I'm suggesting now, the point is to use the swords that that in the symbolism, basically, the sword um, is held by a hand in the Rider Waite deck version, and the hand is, in my depiction, the archangel. So you have four archangels in the four directions correspondingly, and each one holds an emblem, a representation of the element that turns in, that is the suit or suite or whatever. So these elements, the numbered cards, especially, are said to originate from India, Persia, or China, very likely China, where they were used in gambling. They were not used in divination. However, it's very interesting that all of the symbols correspond directly to 4 out of 5 of the of the Taoist elements or ancient Chinese medicine. They were traditional, and that is water with the cups, metal with the swords, wood with the wands, and the pentacles, of course, earth. And the yang aspect, the most yang element, fire, would be in the center. And it's really funny because when you transpose the Taoist system into the West, the center is usually the hearth, the sacred fire. The Indo-European depiction has the fire in the center, whereas the Eastern Asian depiction has earth in the center, as the most balanced of these elements. So this is basically a tautology or a correspondence, a relation, a projection to be like the environment, balanced like nature. But in the Western version, have a relationship with nature where you are the active component and nature is the receiving one, and then that responds to you. So it's more anthropocentric, you might say, whereas the Taoist version is more environment centric, a little more, you might say, passive in a sense, but that's a Western bias as well. The point is that these, and that's why I keep emphasizing this every time, because when you get the foundations right, everything else falls into place with some, shall we say, modifications along the way corresponding to the specific thing you're doing as you progress. That doesn't guarantee that everything's going to be right if you get the initial stuff right, but you can always refer to the initial stuff to get your bearings again. And this is what I'm advising Jay to do. What I have advised is that go back there and just do what you do in the beginning of every summoning, but do it separate from the summonings. At the end of the day, you stimulate these presences, which are completely benign, these archangels, and you connect them to the rulers, which are supposed to be demonic, but they're actually connected to the four winds. In paganism, they are not demons, they're not evil. In ancient Egyptian mythology, they are aspects of the god Amun, the great architect, which the Gnostics might say, "Oh yeah, but this guy's the demiurge. He is evil." Well, not when the archangels tune in, because again, we're not talking about high-level spirits. The evil, if if you want to get into that paradigm, and I do personally, because there is malignant spirit out there, is consciousness. It's a subject. It isn't energy or matter. It bonds with energy and matter. It possesses it. So exorcisms would not be able to occur if this was just matter energy inherently. It would be more like the exorcism would be far even messier than it is. But here, the point is that we are dealing with terrestrial type entities of nature that are instinctive but have evolved along with humans in a way and have been corrupted along with humans. Um, so when you deal with them in a with the archangels, a symbiosis can occur, but you become the vehicle of that symbiosis. And this vehicle isn't one that has to. They're not so personal like the Shimham Farash angels and the Jinn. You don't familiarize them, and you also don't tell them what to do. You don't. They don't do things for you. They don't transform you directly. However, they are a filter that relegates the relationship between your subjective state and the environment with all the other states in it, every other spirit. They are protecting, they are grounding, and they also give a reference frame for the spirits themselves, the jinn, the energetics, energy based spirits like the jinn, in order to be able to relate to you. They're like lenses, and the portals essentially that we generate come through that pillar, the celestial terrestrial interface, shall we say, whose embodiment is the human vessel and the human being and the human spirit and soul. So you don't need a fire element because the soul is the divine spark that is that element. And if you have a connection with your own soul or the truth that you are, it doesn't have to be high level, transcendent, mystical, divine. This is just your own sincere self. So if you're kind of open to that and not a poser or pretender in your own being, it doesn't matter what's going on with other people, but if you're sincere and you understand kind of a balanced relationship with nature, with other human beings, with the terms with which you come into contact with yourself, so to speak. You don't hate yourself. You don't resent yourself. You're okay with yourself. Just some basic stuff here. If you're in that mode, then you can come into that kind of symbiosis. Now, the problem is you may confront other things, like Jay here. He's coming to a point where okay, he's in the dance now. He's dancing with the Ring of Solomon. He's dancing with the zodiac circle. And that means that he's alerted certain things around him. The so-called karma, which is connected to malice, deep down, we don't just make mistakes. Oops, I'm sorry, I misstepped. We have innate instincts and senses for that. There is malice, there is fragmentation. There is disconnection with the environment, with nature, with our own being, with the divine. All of these alienations create a certain friction, which the Christian religion calls tribulation, the word from a Greek word, which means friction. And friction creates heat, but it also creates wear and tear, it creates stress, it creates trauma when acute. So we come to terms with these trauma generating dynamics and the existing inherent trauma within our own being that's reflected through the environment, the trauma of the environment, trauma across the board, suffering, existential suffering. And all of this has its own faces in every facet of whatever we do, the good and the bad. So when you open up this kind of portal, you kind of crank up the sensitivity to all of that, and you kind of alert things that, oh, look at this guy. He's, guy or gal. This person is doing things a normal human isn't really doing. And out of the context of being manipulated by religious dogma that's scaring you, so the fear actually makes you weaker, or arrogance, or one of the so called seven deadly sins of misappropriated instincts, all of these things will create a kind of attention. You see that in Indian Tantra, where before you start meditating, and this isn't just a regular mindfulness meditation, check my videos out, for example, on Magus Wisdom Now on YouTube. This is where you create a deep energy sensation like Kundalini Yoga, where you open up your pathways and you stimulate your own energy sphere and consciousness into bonding with each other, into integration, greater integration, and opening to whatever transcendent presence is out there. And the first thing they do before they even get into that is seal body openings, seal their senses, seal certain meridian, like the palms of the hands, the fingers, the shoulders, the head, the abdomen. All of these things are intended to kind of be filtered. And they even have certain mantras that are called armors that are supposed to protect you from intrusion, non corporeal intrusion when you're meditating because you kind of expose yourself. You don't just go meditate. A lot of people don't realize there's a lot more variables here than just psychology and neurology. And people who just are into think magic is only about non corporeal occultism, spirituality, mythology, whatever's behind all that, they're also missing the point because these variables all need to come together. The ones we know in the modern world with science and physiology, psychophysiology, and all of that, and behavior, and the ones that are more mythic in nature, more archetypal in nature, and they are not mutually incompatible. I like to keep them separate because there's so many you can't communicate with people. There's this divide, and one side just completely because it's conditioning. Because once you start integrating these things, you kind of start the veil kind of falls, and the veil is the veil of the mind's ability to interpret these things and integrate them as natural. No such thing as supernatural. Even St. Augustine said that. There is no supernatural. That's just whatever we don't know and don't understand. So in this case, the advice I gave to Jay was to, well, just do that. Do your fusion alchemy. Get these, and you don't have to have archangels all over, and rulers and all of that. All you need to do is hone it all down into superpowered ace symbols: sword, cup, pentacle, wand, and put those close to your body, and they will contain that essence and your mind focus because you've been doing it for quite a bit, and so you're already there in the integration. Just use it twice a day, 3 times a day. And also he's good at divination. So the thing is that this thing didn't go through. He couldn't integrate it because there was another influence involved. There was something involved that needed his attention. Agaris is like a god of the earth. It's like the guy Dionysus without the drunken craziness. So it has to do with earth energy, earth connection, ley line connections. And when he makes the spirits of the earth dance, that's what the text says, it's not that he creates earthquakes. It's essentially enlivens the ley lines so you can actually feel what's going on under your feet and absorb the energy and be empowered by it. So Agaris is teaching you. Bile opens up the gateway to perception of the ethereal web, for lack of a better word. And this ethereal web is connected to perception of the underworld, the unseen, the invisible world. And when you become aligned with the invisible world, you become invisible yourself. It's not that you just blip out, people can't physically see you. It's just that your energy doesn't register in the same manner. So it is a way to conceal yourself because nobody notices you because they're not used to um, perceiving the underworld, so to speak, unless subconsciously. I mean, you may register subconsciously for people, and that may freak them out in a way. But if you're not really tuned into that, you get out of it, and you're fatigued and all of this. The fatigue kind of exacerbates the situation, but you can always turn back around and use the symbols in an empowered manner in order to, because our awareness is impacting. People who are into metaphysical stuff, they believe that you can manifest events. They believe either through prayer, where some divine influence or alternate influence helps you do so, or through your own initiative. So, manifesting events doesn't mean you craft the event all on your own. It means you are resonating with a probability that is then the pattern attracts physical outcomes. Quantum theory says similar things to how things happen. So in doing so, you can actually protect yourself, and that's it's a very simple thing. And the system itself, you don't have to range out. Oh, practice this other thing now. No, it's all self-contained. But Jay's been thrown off his game because this is a serious issue. This issue with this alleged Danielle person. Now, before anybody goes, oh well, some woman problem. Well, Jay's been going back and forth about the gender. This is just an arbitrary sticking that it's a female, but it might not be. And until further notice, and Jay's already like said, I'm sick of this running. It's not like this person is going to go look at the podcast here, and who cares if it does. So we might just, he might just, be more frank with it because you're beating around the bush here, and that kind of muddies the waters a little bit. So this individual is an issue, and it's not a romantic situation, and it's not anything that has to do with deep friendship and stuff like that or some social thing. This is a very, very deep issue. There's a deep bond between these two that's not one of, you know, I mean, it's not hostile. There's no hostility. This thing is all going behind the scenes. So as far as Jay's concerned, he could easily be if he like came out publicly with this person, it'd be like gaslighting. Well, what? You're crazy. There's nothing going on here. But he's affected somehow. So if you're not going to confront somebody and you can't because you sound insane, well, don't resort to esoteric practice. And this is an aggressive esoteric practice. This is a dynamic esoteric practice of self-defense. So get back into your energy work and the Tai Chi and all of that, and then get into specific esoteric practice like the cardinal points, creating a ring of protection around you that's not some rigid wall surrounding a castle or fortification. There's actually gin for that are specific to those ends. This is a filtration dynamic of consciousness and energy states that are connected to the planet that can regulate the situation much in the same way as the magnetic field prevents cosmic rays from entering. So it does act like it absorbs their energy, it releases their energy, and it doesn't penetrate. But energies do penetrate to the point that they are biologically compatible. So you're not insulated from your environment. You're just absorbing whatever's healthy to you. Because here's what happens with vampirism, and we'll get into that after even the next, the next little phase of his rant, so to speak. That the these influences do not just take something from you. There's more than that. They can't just take something. They have to give something back. So somebody eats and somebody defecates, and they'll eat what's valuable to you and project upon you what they consider toxic to them. So if I think deep down that I'm a worthless piece of crap, I'm going to project that onto somebody else while I take their greatest sense of how great they are and their talent and their dreams. So I'll feel inspired. My body can even heal physically. I will look younger if I do that. There are so many temptations for people. You see this on the cult forums all the time. Yeah, I feel so great when I can bleed everybody dry psychically. And then there's all of this claim that, well, they don't know what they're doing. Oh, I believe most of them do. Some don't. But then again, they do instinctively and they don't linger on it because there's no reason to, because why, society already says that such a thing doesn't happen, or if it does, it's just, a side thing. It's very rare and all of this, and I don't think it's very rare. I think it's quite common. And it's just that not everybody, it's not common for everybody or even most people. But there are people who have a certain constitution for whom it is common. And, they become everybody's bitch whether they know it or not. And Jay is such a person. And then you go, well, I could have been, but think about it. I mean, other people would see you with super talents and obviously an edge, some kind of spiritual privilege, maybe that it would be perceived like that, and they would be crap. If they couldn't bleed you, their lives would be utter crap. Whereas you, at least, because you, even if you're bled or vampired, still have an advantage. You keep going. You have greater willpower. You have greater life force, even though you're down to like 10% less of what you could be. So in that way, it's almost like your royalty, but down to a kind of lower middle class level. Whereas if you were one of the peasants bled like that, you'd be gone. The point is that as this is still dysfunctional, and somebody who is a vampire isn't necessarily forced to be one, even though they think they are in all of this. If vampirism was not going on, then empowered, talented people would be able to help society, in my honest opinion, far more. They wouldn't just selfishly, because such people tend to be empathic. They're not callous psychopaths. Callous psychopaths are usually the ones who are parasites. Not saying that this person is, but they're the ones that usually make a point to tear down human sincerity, the human deeper, uh, most evolved, spiritually mature aspects, you might say. Well, let's see where he takes this. Because up to this point, he feels that, oh, well, I don't know what to do. So, this final point is something he sent me a little later. And this was essentially a dream. So, we're back to dream analysis again, but I'm not going to analyze the dream because he already does. And it's pretty short, so bear with me and hear it out because after that, there's a little more commentary to come. Not much, though. So let's hear about this, Jay.
I had a dream that everybody may need to hear. I had the strangest dream of getting a cactus plant. Now, the cactus may have something to do with the desert, which I do enjoy quite a bit. And we all know there is a southwestern kind of zone with me. I get into the Mexican Aztec culture kind of thing, even though I don't really know. I get into the vibe. I don't really know anybody there, but I just like the vibe. I like it. So anyway, I get this pet cactus, and I got it somehow at my old gymnastics gym that I used to, train at when I was a child for about 10 years. And so anyway, I'm there, and I get this cactus plant, and I take it home, but the cactus is kind of alive, and it wants to stand on its own, but it can't. And so I keep trying to prop it up, and then it even looks like a little person. Oh my God, I think I'm figuring out everything as I tell the story to you guys. Its arms start falling off, its leg starts falling off. It's got one leg to stand on, and it's just barely there. And every time I try to stand it up properly, it just falls over. And I'm like, I feel really sorry, and I really for this cactus plant, and I really like it, but it's almost like it's alive. And then it actually turns into something alive, and it's starving of water, it feels like, and I can hear it and feel it breathe, and I'm just watching it die. Um, so, okay, for those of you who are not into interpreting dreams, that was the most obvious dream I've ever thought about. So anyway, I could my desert magic is dying and is getting vampired by Danielle. All right, well, there you go. I had that the night before said show. So yeah, this has got to stop. But again, if you've got anything to add, Ari, please go ahead and add it. All right, there we go. Dr. J out.
Now, this dream of Jay's is self-explanatory. So when he made the pretty accurate, he made a very accurate interpretation. And then he sent me a sound bite and tried to, explain and express more. But there isn't a necessity to really get into it because a lot of it is like just, I need to deal with this. How do we deal with this? And and he told me there that he had an astute insight that free gigs don't are the ones that are draining. When he gets paid formally to go and perform somewhere with his band there, that the stuff doesn't usually happen. But if it's some informal type thing, it does. So what I tell him is that it's a fundamental attribute of karmic confrontation. I'm commenting as I go, so I did not listen beyond that certain point that he was telling me about this. But when you get paid, the conditions are defined. You're given compensation for a specific thing. The payment is like a ritual confirming a contract that exchanges your playing for money. That's it. So it's manifesting a condition that restricts most of the energy exchanges accordingly because it's so well defined. And whenever you get what you pay for, so the people who pay you already have given something to you or have promised to give it, and you in turn give them something else. So within that context, it's almost like a done deal, so nothing can interfere. It can, but it's not as easy. It's almost like, and I gave the analogy of doing pro bono work for a relative. You do something, and then the relative's like, okay, you're doing it for free. And then they, yeah, yeah, but I'm also your relative, do some extra. They can take advantage of you and stuff. But if you have a set contract that I'm going to do this, that, the other for this amount of money, and it's an impersonal situation where you don't even know your customer, so to speak, but you deliver and they deliver. And that's that. Nobody takes advantage of anybody else. It's a lot more difficult. That's why we have contracts. In this case, however, vampires take advantage of the open ended interactions where things are informal. In fact, vampires will manipulate their so called victims to be obligated. Oh, I need this, or please do that, or oh, let me help you. They'll try to help you, give you a little thing. It's like somebody, oh, here's a little piece of soap or a toothpick, and in return, I want your car, or you owe me now. And that gives them, and of course, since all of this is under the radar, they can even deny that they've even done anything or that they have anything to say. And it's very easy for people to misperceive things, especially if they're traumatized. So yeah, if you're not careful, you're gonna end up accusing the wrong people. You're gonna end up accusing innocent people at some point, and there's gonna be witch hunts, and all of this happens. That doesn't mean the vampirism isn't real or the violation isn't real. It's just that we better be damn sure that what we're perceiving is really what we're perceiving, and the burden of proof in this case is unfortunately on the victim, and because the victim might not be a victim. The victim might be just another perpetrator or a psychopath or a manipulator that wants to start a witch hunt, and everybody else just goes along. So it's understandable that this type of thing is discouraged to actually point fingers, but at the same time, it does occur, and with a lot of people, it's a major issue. Um, the symptoms that Jay described in this case are not just vampiric in the sense of being drained of life force. It's not just a predator or a parasite feeding on you. This is a kind of psychic attack that tries to sabotage the deeper work because I don't think that things are what they seem. So some individual is a vampire and they do this psychically on their own initiative, but then they kind of fade away and all of a sudden they're back and the issues seem to have been overcome and then all of a sudden they're back more virile than ever. So what happens? Well, sometimes just like you can do spirit summoning here, there are ambient parasites and people who feel bad about themselves attract them. And these parasites don't need to latch on and drain these people dry. If they are intrinsically have the style and the structure of somebody who can drain other people and who can dump on other people and may have done it as a defense mechanism as a child or in other times in their life, the parasite will actually make a deal with them at a subconscious level. The person might feel it all in their imagination or they might not feel it at all, but just find their thoughts moving in a certain direction, and then all of a sudden, even though people around them might drop like flies or get bad luck or feel depressed, get some chronic state of depression, this person who was depressed all of a sudden feels great, is enlivened. And just like Jay said, yeah, I left that place and all of a sudden I'm a lot better. So observation should not be underestimated. And second guessing yourself is something that is deleterious. It's not good. Being your own skeptic and being extra careful in how you do things, that's not second guessing yourself. That's vetting yourself. That's essentially examining everything with a fine-tuned comb if necessary. But saying that no, it can't be when you haven't even proven that it can't be to your own self, to your own satisfaction. And some people say, no, you can never prove that it can't be. Well, maybe not, but you can prove that it can be, and you need to take that into account because when when you take away the impossible, the whatever remains, however improbable, however strange, needs to be examined carefully. So my original intent with the podcast was just to send sound recordings with Jay, and he feels now that it's almost like a compromise that he has to beat around the bush not to offend and not to do. Because one of the things is that, well, you should never lose your civilized ethics, so to speak. You should always take the high road, but at the same time, putting a doormat on the high road is still going to get you stepped on. So, in this case, being able to be sincere, and we're not airing this out to accuse anybody in all of this. This is an example. And anybody who gets into occultism ends up accusing the occultism and presenting religious arguments and this, that, and the other, when every mystic on the planet essentially does esoteric practice. They don't just pray and get, maybe God answers, maybe God doesn't. They take the initiative. These are people with abilities. And yeah, the ones that live in monasteries and stuff, they have to go according to doctrine. And everybody else is a sinner. And yes, people who do take the initiative are often psychopaths. Why is that? Because the good people don't. I mean, if you're a decent person, many of us think we are, of course, and we may be wrong, but if you know yourself and you know at least you're not an intentional psychopath or even a vampire, if you know yourself enough, and then if you do something in a way that's beneficial, you're going to leave less space for those who try to distort it and corrupt it. You will also provide the opportunity for others to be able to perceive when somebody is messing with them in a psychic or psychological manner. This isn't just the rational mind speaking. This is the intuitive mind, and this is beyond that. This is the synthesis of the two. Where that is the important thing that most people don't get is that they're supposed to work together into a way that's more than the sum of its parts. So in a sense, it's not just about okay, teaching summoning, like I said before, teaching summoning to interact with these spirits and do something that's pretty incredible by conventional standards, even though there's very little drama. But the drama occurs in other ways. The drama bleeds into IRL, real life, and that's a pretty significant thing. Now, I don't want to I don't want to rant on this, but I will say another thing. There are layers of causality here. This means that just like I say, and I present it very simply, level one, level two, level three, psychological layer, interactive relationship layer, and collective layer. And possibly there's a cosmic layer, a deeper layer. And beyond the cosmic layer, there's a transcendent divine layer. And the deeper and these aren't like higher or greater in the sense, they're deeper. So the deeper you go, the more you can deal with the causality at its root, and then the other stuff is going to take care of itself. If you're just going on the psychological level, the world is not going to change. If you just go on the relationship level, you can influence society and you can influence other people and people around you and inspire them, and that's wonderful, but the human collective isn't going to change. And if you're at the human collective level, you're going to encounter a whole bunch of other craziness and a whole bunch of other high strangeness that not only is difficult to address on its own terms, you need the beyond levels to deal with it. But at the same time, you're still playing strategy and tactics in a certain way. It's only when you get to the deepest layer of existential interface or connection that you you even do away with the good and evil issue. It doesn't disappear, but it takes on a different form. And you're not free of the other levels, just like if you deal with the human collective or the relationship level, to make it more tangible here. You don't stop dealing with your own psychology. It might be effortless and you might be natural and you might be comfortable in your own skin and all of that, but you're still kind of, you're aware of what you're doing. You don't become callous. You're aware of the feedback with other people and you respect yourself. You don't sacrifice your own integrity for a nice relationship or something. A lot of us do and have done, and many will do, but it's really not good. It's not healthy. And at the same time, you don't throw yourself under the bus for the human collective. You don't sacrifice your personal relationships for some ideal. I don't, at least. I don't feel that it should be done. I don't feel that it's necessary. It shouldn't be necessary. Let's put it that way. You see, if we compromise in our desire to make things better by falling for compromises that lessen us, then making things better is going to be undoable. Most people will say, well, that's not even worth it. I'd rather live in dystopia and get by as best I can than just throw myself under the bus because I'm told that there's no other choice. Or give up my deepest sensibilities because I'm told I have to submit to this authority or that authority or this divine authority. You know, it's like somebody once said, man, God is love. Would love actually ask that? Where does this come from? So these are questions that I believe anybody who says that they're interested in esoteric stuff and isn't just role playing should ask and should contemplate. This isn't just for philosophers, because poor philosophers, all they got is their reason and an intuition that's just based on whatever computing, wherever unconscious input they have in front of their face. So more is needed here. In any case, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that the presentation wasn't a tribulation listening to it because I am having a few problems with my microphone. Had a bit of an accident, so I'm going to be with this type of mode, but I think it's listenable, and the information is is valuable in my honest opinion. We're going to get more into it because next time Jay will have a positive experience with Agares, and Agares is a step beyond just Baal. There's more into it. Plus, the Shemham and Farash angel related to Agares is also in parallel and in sync with it. So there's a lot of synchronicities going on here. Anyways, I've already plugged in my YouTube channel, and I'm going to continue with my Substack stuff. I've stopped for a little bit because there was a lot going on. And this isn't the type of thing where I do research and then present something. This is based on experience and the feedback of real world experience and the feedback of, for example, I had uh, an event happen that seemed like what some people would call a portal opening. And I want to express that, but it's so otherworldly that it's very hard to put into words. And I can put it into words up to a certain point, but I'm going to write about it instead of trying to talk about it. And there's other things as well. So, again, it's a never ending source of material. And thanks for listening. Thanks for your patience. So, without any further ado, Magus